Hello, and welcome to US History and Elections. Today is the 14th of October 2020, and there are currently 20 days remaining until Election Day, November the 3rd. And polling data is showing that Joe Biden has a considerable lead above 10 points nationwide. He is polling extremely well in the key battleground states such as Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And so far, everything looks on course for a considerable and very convincing Joe Biden victory. However, we know in 2016 people were saying that about Hillary Clinton only 3 weeks before the election, and we all know how that turned out. And this is a New York Times article that was posted today, as you can see, 14th of October, titled Biden is not out of the woods yet. And basically goes over a few things that show that Donald Trump and the Republicans in general are doing pretty well. As you can see, this is about the party registration in the key battleground states. As you can see in Pennsylvania, there's a almost 100,000, actually about an 80,000 voter difference since June in Pennsylvania for Republicans voting registration, which is pretty important, however, in Arizona, which has been trending very, very much to the Democrats ever since 2016 and just before that as well, ever since the turn of the decade, I'd say. The Democrats do lead in that compared to every other swing state. Florida, 100,000 more Republicans have signed up or registered as Republicans since March. In Arizona, it's the complete opposite, and Democrats are out registering Republicans. However, this is not what we're going to be focusing on today. We're going to be looking at the polls and especially Donald Trump's uh, polling, considering Latino voters and especially Hispanic Catholics. Now, Mexicans are Catholics and Cubans are Catholics. For the most part, of course, you're going to have some agnostics and some atheists and some Jewish, etc. But for the most part, the vast majority of Hispanics are Catholics, following their Spanish religious roots. And the Democrats, especially Joe Biden, has definitely gone down with the favorability with these groups since 2016. Despite Joe Biden being a lifelong Catholic, he's not doing well or as well as he could be with Hispanic Catholics. And it could be a very important voting group, especially in certain states where Donald Trump could be turning this around. Now, I'm just going to look at some Pew Research polls. These polls are taken at the turn of October, from September to October. And overall, it just does show a 10-point lead for Joe Biden across all voters. And he is leading in men, women, white, sorry, not white, black, Hispanic, and Asian, however. If we look at these minority voters, Hispanics do make up the largest proportion of all minorities, make up more than blacks and Asians. And this is because in the Sun Belt, especially in Texas and Florida and Arizona and California, there's a lot and a lot of Hispanics currently moving into these states, and they are considerably changing the demographics in these areas. And that is why you're seeing places like Arizona and California and Texas shift even more to the Democrats and starting to lose their Republican status in Texas and Arizona. However, you can see that 30% of Hispanics, according to this Pew Research poll, are planning on voting for Donald Trump. And compared to the rest of the minorities, blacks have less, blacks are almost entirely, only 1 in 10 will be voting for Donald Trump, and only 2 in 10 Asians will be voting for Donald Trump. It's 3 in 10 for Hispanics, so almost a third of voters. And given that 8% of these are still undecided, this could be very, very key in determining the election results of certain states. Now, out of all Hispanics, Mexicans are probably the most influential, and we're going to be looking at another Pew Research poll. I've got another one lined up after this, but it's quite interesting to see how they change from being foreign-born to second generation to being third or higher generation. Now, like I've said, there's been a huge increase in illegal and legal immigration into the US from the southern border, and as you can see, this is just identity, how they characterize themselves. If they say they are, Hispanic or Latino, and, whether they're Mexicans or they're Nicaraguans or Cubans, or if they identify themselves as Americans. technically, if they are a citizen, they are Americans, especially second generation and third generation people who are born in America are Americans. But it's very important how they define themselves as those who define themselves, as Mexicans, as Nicaraguans, as Bolivians, etc. They're going to be more likely to vote for the Democrats, and those who find themselves Americans are going to be more likely to vote for Trump and Republicans. Now, you can see this shift hugely from 4% when foreign-born classifying themselves as Americans to a third, almost the largest group. And, there's still a huge amount, but, you see them go from foreign-born, a majority saying that they identify with their country of birth to only a third when they are third or fourth or fifth generation immigrants. And that is very important because this shift away does show very good signs for Donald Trump, and he is seeing those very good signs, especially with Cuban voters. Now, I'm just going to go to the first one here, which is going to show that Cuban voters are lean Republican overall, especially compared to other Hispanics, where only 32% of them lean Republican. Almost 6 out of 10 Cubans will be voting or leaning Republican, and that's very important because back in where's the thing? Yeah, here it is. Back in 2016, out of all the Latino groups, Cuban Americans were those who went out to vote. Out of all the eligible voters, went out to vote in the highest percentage out of any others, and much higher, 10 points higher than all Latinos in general. And especially in places like Miami-Dade County, in the south of Florida, Miami, just in general, there's a very, very strong Cuban American population. And you can see that with Donald Trump, winning that group quite convincingly in 2016. And all the polls show that he's expected to do even better with Latinos as a whole, but especially Cuban Americans in this election. And we all know how close Florida is at the moment. Yes, the senior vote uh, in Florida is doing quite well for Biden at the moment, but there's still 3 weeks left until the election, and that could definitely change very soon. And one big thing I want to point out is look at this foreign policy. Less than 50% of non-Cuban Latinos say that foreign policy is an important part when they're deciding who to vote for. For Cubans, it's 3/4. Now, of course, they're going to have a much closer, connection to their country. I believe from Miami, it's less than 100 miles to Cuba, and foreign policy. Cuba is a communist nation, still is, and it has been for the last 65, 70 years. It's been quite a long time that it's been a communist nation, and there's quite a lot of Cubans, especially with 9 out of 10 saying that the economy is very, very important. Same with violent crime, and the candidate who is focusing more on the economy, violent crime, and foreign policy, especially against communism and socialism as a whole, is Donald Trump. And the Republicans in general, law and order is going to resonate very well with Cubans over Latinos as a whole. And as you can see, if you want to talk about climate change and racial inequality, which the Democrats prefer to focus on, it's even lower. They're a lot lower than Latinos in general. So those are terrific signs for the president if he wants to try and be in a fighting chance of winning Florida. And that is why, as much as I see these polls go up to a 5-point lead for Joe Biden at the moment, I think there's going to be a very strong Cuban vote in the south of Florida, around Miami and its suburbs and very near cities, Long Beach. Sorry, not Long Beach. Daytona Beach as well, but that is further up the coast. And yeah, so these polls focusing on Latino Americans, especially Cuban Americans, are a good sign for the president. If he wants to hold on to voters that he won back in 2016 and can expand upon, and overall he has been doing even better with minorities than any other Republican presidential candidate for ages, and he's doing even better than he was in 2016 with minority candidates. All of his approval ratings with all the minorities hit a peak at the start of the year and have gone down ever since the coronavirus. But he's still doing better in 2016 with every single racial group was a steady line going up, and then it's gone down a bit, but it's still above the 2016 figure of approval rating for the president among minority groups, and he can do very well in Florida, especially. I would still say that it's a toss-up at this moment, if anything, tilt Democratic and Joe Biden because of the strong senior vote, which I will mention in an upcoming video. But we cannot count out Donald Trump as of yet. There's still 3 weeks to go. Hillary Clinton lost from this point. However, she was only up 7 points at this time. And Donald Trump can definitely get some inroads with strong and enthusiastic support among the Latino American group, which he's doing very well in, considering he is Republican. So, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all again soon.